These stylish shades do more than just block out sunlight. In fact, these are essentially dual 1080p 120Hz Sony Micro OLED displays built inside a set of electrochromic Ray-Ban style sunglasses. There's a lot to unpack there, so let's get into it, starting with a look around them. These VITURE Pro XR glasses have a pretty sleek style. As I said, it's kind of a Ray-Ban style frame with a sleek matte dark blue coating, contrasting the bright orange of the VITURE logo on the left-hand side pretty nicely. The lenses have a distinct dark blue tint at the top half that's permanently there, and then a semi-translucent half below that. The magic of the electrochromic film is that with a press of a button on the left-hand arm, the lens blacks out. It isn't 100% effective, still letting you see a sort of faint copy of especially brighter parts of the world behind the displays, but compared to the translucent mode, it's worlds different. There are actually a couple of buttons on here. The single button on the front or sort of the bottom of the left arm controls the lenses and toggles between the axis adjustment and volume corrections, and the volume rocker style switch behind it, which is what lets you control the brightness of the displays, that axis adjustment and volume. Also the color mode with a few different options there as well. You do have two speakers built into the arms that in theory fire directly down into your ears, but in my experience they are, well, how do I say this politely? God awful. They are tinny, compressed, not overly loud, and considering one of the key selling points of this sort of display is the ultimate level of screen privacy you get, at least in theory, we'll come back to that later, the speakers seem to project more outwards than into your ears. So know that you have absolutely no audio privacy with these. On the other arm, you'll find the magnetic connector that basically just passes the entire USB-C pinout into the glasses. That included magnetic cable isn't all that long, so you definitely need your display source pretty nearby. It does require DisplayPort alt mode over USB-C, as you might expect, so generally laptops and phones are the best sources for that. While there aren't any other controls on the right arm, it is worth noting that I'm pretty confident that all of the processing hardware that's in this sort of set of glasses is buried in this right arm. How can I be so confident in saying that? Well, that's easy. The right arm hits 40 degrees Celsius or higher at times, at least give or take. It is noticeably warm, and that heat does translate into your right temple, which can get a little uncomfortable. Whenever you take them off, especially if you've been wearing them for a little while, you can't help but notice the right side of your head is rather toasty. Anyway, carrying on the tour, the glasses come with 5 nosepiece options. Almost exclusively, they alter the height that they sit on your head, which is kind of important since half of the visual field is blocked off by the projectors themselves. But interestingly for me, none of them were a perfect fit, although the default set kind of worked out best. You do also have dials up at the top, which essentially let you correct for focus, something that us non-perfect vision folks sorely need. There is some amount of interpupillary distance correction, namely that axis adjustment setting that I mentioned earlier, which does help correct for some of the cross-eyed sort of feeling that you get when you use these by default without adjusting them. But even then, they still aren't exactly perfect, as the adjustment range isn't massive. It's not the easiest to look at. I should also note that if you have astigmatism, like I do, the focus correction only goes so far to helping you. I decided to write this entire script using these with my laptop, and I can't understate just how difficult that was for me. How many spelling errors I had to come back on my desktop and correct later, and how much time I was spent like just closing one eye at a time, desperately trying to read what I'd just written. Using these for productivity isn't exactly ideal, at least for me. With that said, I can't deny that the Sony Micro OLED displays that are in here aren't frankly amazing. They are sharp, fast, fluid, and vibrant AF. They supposedly output 4,000 nits of brightness, with 1,000 of those nits actually making it to your eyes. And I can say that at least with the glasses darkened or tinted, you will never struggle for brightness here. I sat in direct summer sunlight shining straight in my face, and I could still see the displays just fine. With the glasses untinted, the sort of transparency mode, you will struggle to see the displays basically at all when there's really any light around, since, well, these are just projectors. The same rules apply as a conventional projector, meaning without the dark backdrop, the contrast ratio goes out the window. Blacks become grey, and a transparent grey at that, so only the brightest objects are even remotely visible. Of course, being OLEDs, the response times are functionally instant, and having a 120Hz refresh rate makes these incredibly smooth. Naturally, I did try gaming on them. You would imagine that a 120Hz OLED per eye would be an absolute dream, but, well, it just wasn't. Unlike VR, these XR glasses don't do any form of motion tracking, at least by default. We'll come back to that. They are just static displays, so any amount of head movement means that the display or the image follows with you, but without the in-game world updating or changing the camera view. That means that even someone like me, who never gets motion sick, feels pretty uncomfortable with moving even a little while gaming. It is better with static content like writing this script, but in games, it's quickly a barfest. I wasn't able to do any response time or latency testing. It's a bit of a complicated sort of view, but at least to the eye I can say that it does seem pretty quick. While perfectly stationary, it's still a far cry from both VR and just a nice display, as a kind of worst of both worlds, at least experience to me. Part of that is likely my vision problems, although those don't inhibit me having a good VR experience, but equally this just isn't the best gaming display. Something you might have noticed though is that I've mostly been talking about using this with a PC, a laptop specifically, when like half the marketing around this is using them with your phone. That is for a couple of reasons. First, these can only really duplicate or extend your display, especially on a phone it's just duplication. For a laptop that's fine because you can use the keyboard and mouse and pretty easily without having to look at them. You can even turn your laptop's display off to use these as your only display, which makes a lot of sense, gives you that privacy aspect, right? But your phone? Well, at least for my phone, that's where it gets weird, because your phone screen has to stay on the whole time while you're using these, meaning you're draining your phone's battery at least twice as fast as if you're just looking at your phone screen. Second, if you want to interact with what's on the screen, you still need to look at your phone screen to see where to press, something that you obviously can't do without looking through or past the glasses. Now, VITURE did send over something that they think should help with that, which is this, their smartphone game controller made in partnership with 8BitDo. This is supposedly the world's first XR compatible mobile controller, likely because they're the only one on Earth who's bothered to fully populate the USB-C pinout for pass-through. It does have all the sort of fancy controller features you would expect, like Hall effect joysticks and 2 extra buttons in the back, and of course the mobile controller features like an easy slide out mechanism to let you slot your phone in the middle, and a grippy rubber pad on the back to hopefully keep it there. The USB port that connects to your phone does have a fair bit of flexibility for sort of accommodating different phone sizes, and I'm happy to say that it does feel like a pretty neat controller. The grips are nicely shaped for a pretty comfortable hold, and everything is sort of well positioned, nice sort of kinesthetic feedback on some of the buttons. It's an enjoyable enough experience for sure. I should note that some phones won't work with this though. My Oppo Find X5, I think it is, Find X5 Lite, just did not work with it, so I had to use my OnePlus 7T Pro instead. However, the same concerns I have for gaming with a laptop on these glasses is the same for mobile gaming too, albeit with significantly less or sort of worse visual quality and performance. If anything, trying this out for as long as I have has only proven how uncomfortable these are to use for long periods, at least for me anyway. Your mileage may vary. Between the right arm cooking my temple and the nose piece crushing my nasal bone, on top of the visual discomfort of having sort of lacking focus and clarity, meant that I was looking for pretty much any excuse to just take these things off. These aren't something that I really enjoyed using, and they're just not something that I'm keen to incorporate into my day-to-day life anytime soon. It is worth noting that the marketing images for these make them look a lot more subtle than they actually are. From basically one very specific angle, they do look like pretty conventional glasses. But from any other angle, especially side-on, you can see just how weird these things look on you. Due to the display's thickness, the fact that they've covered half of the visual field with these projectors in order to hide them and not make the frames too bulky, well, they sit remarkably far away from your head, which gives them quite an odd appearance. Now, I mentioned we come back to some of the extra features, and there are actually two other options when it comes to using these glasses, and both are VITURE software features that are interesting. First is Spacewalker, an app which in theory lets you use these kind of AR glasses similar to Apple's Vision Pros, placing windows in fixed real-world space so that you can physically turn and look around at the various windows. The problem is that the view window is really pretty small through these displays, and since there isn't proper 3D tracking, it's only really sort of pan and tilt, not sort of forward and backward and that sort of stuff, all you get is a super zoomed in view of an otherwise standard virtual desktop. It also takes a full minute to actually enable, and as far as I can tell, you can't move or reset the virtual position of those windows after enabling it without just closing the app and reopening it and then holding yourself still while you look through the glasses where you want the window to be before it starts working again. The theory of this feature is pretty cool, but its implementation leaves a lot to be desired. The same can be said for the other app, Immersive 3D, which in theory offers an automatic 2D to 3D experience, but in practice just gives you a 5 FPS slideshow of whatever you're watching or doing, and a splitting headache from all of the flickering. I wish that I could show you this sort of properly and capture it on camera. It's a pretty difficult thing to capture with the projector and that sort of thing with space. I've done a few clips that hopefully will sort of demonstrate things, but you'll just have to take my word for it when I say that these experiences need a lot of refinement before I can even judge the idea, let alone the execution. Where these do shine, pun intended, is with content consumption. These are the perfect things to watch TV in bed with. Just chill with your glasses on, binge watching Netflix, on your own, mind you, from your phone. No more phone falling on your face problems, no tired arms and holding your phone up or having to lie in uncomfortable positions just to watch something. These are the answer. Now, do I think that I would be willing to spend $400 to solve that problem? Hell no! Especially as the aforementioned comfort and vision problems are still very much present. But, for the right person, maybe this is worth it? I mean, I can't imagine using these out and about or on public transport, especially because half your vision's blocked and the bit that isn't blocked is still pretty fully blocked. So, and even if you did, you'd still want to use headphones to go with them because both the speaker, like direction, orientation, and quality are just not suitable for being in public. So this feels very much like an at-home alone type of deal. If that sounds like something you would find useful, then sure, give them a go. They aren't perfect. The heat issue is pretty hard to ignore, but most of my other complaints here are that they don't fit me well. But that implies that they might fit someone else fine. The controller is $79 on its own, which seems a bit pricey, or $59 if you buy them with the $409 glasses, which isn't so bad. Whether these are worth it very much depends on if you feel you'll make use of them and if they fit your head and eyes well. So while they very much aren't for me, I wouldn't rule them out entirely. They are really cool, and the fact that you can get dual 1080p 120Hz micro OLED displays in a pair of realistically not all too weirdly shaped glasses, and only for a couple $100, is absolutely insane in a good way. And maybe a more refined sort of version 2 of these might be a little more palatable for me. Either way, they're really cool, just not actually for me. Of course, with that said, those are my thoughts, but I'd love to hear yours in the comments down below. What do you think of these VITURE Pro XR glasses? Are they for you? Or would you, rather just, watch it on a display, VR headset, something else instead? Let me know what you think in the comments down below, and any use cases you might have for them that we've not talked about here. If you do, or if you aren't interested in them, I'll leave a link to them in the description. You can check out the subscribe button for more videos like this one, and check out plenty of other videos on the end cards as well. You can also check out my own hardware that I unfortunately wasn't able to make use of in this video, the open source response time and latency testing tools at osrtt.com. That's linked in the description. And otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you all in the next video.